Well, hello and welcome. I am Patrick Nairn, and it's a pleasure to be able to share this really short technical tip with you today. The idea is that many of us, when we go live, when we are on camera, we want to look really professional. We want to look exceptional, but we might not have all of that knowledge necessary to help us to get that look. So I just wanted to share today a very simple but very effective and often misunderstood or overlooked technique which can help you as a coach to look polished and confident on camera without having, huge or bulky gear is what my clients often talk about. They don't want to have their homes filled with this huge amount of gear because they really want to go live from their homes, but they don't want to turn their home into a studio, or they might not have the room to turn it into a studio. And this is a technique that's used by many of the top photographers and videographers. And in fact, it's used a lot in professional studios and on professional film sets. And this is a technique that allows a photographer or a lighting expert to multiply the power of one or more lights. This can be used in a compound way. And I'm just going to use this today with one light just to show you how this effect works. So if you're a coach who wants to really shine online, and I don't mean shiny face, I mean shine in the sense of people are really wanting to see you and you're glowing the way that you want to glow, then this is for you. So before I jump into the technique, I want to really talk about why does lighting matter for a coach? Now, the question has been answered in this series, but if you're just joining me for the first time and you've not heard about any of the tips that I've mentioned before, well, one of the main reasons why a coach wants to really look great on camera is akin to a sports sort of athlete who is used to running on the 100 meters and winning, doing really well. But they decide to go for the biggest race of their life without using what we call spiked running shoes or track shoes, the actual shoes that are designed to give you the best effect when you're actually running in a track which is designed to give you the best speed possible. But you decide on that day you're not going to use the shoes that you know you should use. Well, this is the issue, is your competitors are going to use the shoes that they should use. And you're likely to not win if you just turned up in regular training shoes. And this is really what it's all about for my coaches. It's not that you have to get best lighting or good lighting or even improve your lighting. You don't have to. There's no reason for you to have to do this other than the reason that you want to perform at your best. And when I talk to my coaches, they always say, Patrick, I want to perform at my best. And then they give me an explanation as to why they're worried about lighting. And I say, well, your lighting doesn't have to be bulky. It doesn't have to take up a lot of space. And what I'll show you in just a short while is what that light can look like. But let's think for a moment, is what do we actually want from our life? Well, we want to be able to tell our stories. We want to be able to connect with our audience, and we want to be authentic. And for many of my coaches, what holds them back from being authentic and building trust is that they really don't feel confident on camera. And if I could sum this up in one area, it would be confidence. Now, my friend here, Fred, doesn't lack confidence. Fred doesn't have to think about anything. Fred doesn't really have the capacity to think about anything. So Fred always has the same expression and looks the same way. And so Fred can never really build trust any further from whether you trust him initially or not. But the job that I want you to get into is the job of creating your confidence first by being consistent online, being consistent in front of your audience when you're speaking live, so that you can start to get the jitters out and start to build trust, because you're going to feel more confident, you're going to feel more comfortable, you're going to feel like you're being consistent. And then once you go through the consistency, you will gain the confidence. You'll feel this is a great thing for me to do. And then you'll start to gain authority because people are seeing you enough and they start to trust you and believe you. Poor lighting, of course, we know, has the opposite effect and takes away from your energy, takes away from your expressions. So the audience can't really see you the way that they want to and connect with you the way that your energy suggests they should. So what are we going to do today? Well, we're going to talk about reflectors. And in specifics, I'm going to use 2 reflectors if everything goes to plan. But I'm going to start off by just showing you how simple the idea of using a reflector can be. What is a reflector? Well, in photographic terms, anything is a reflector, really. For photographers and videographers, any surface can be a reflector. And I really do mean that. And so when you're on a film set or a photo shoot, you're scanning the scene to see what parts of that scene might put a reflection somewhere where you don't want it to be. So you are constantly looking and testing and making sure the light goes exactly where you want it and not where you don't want it, because that could be a light that shows up across the face perhaps of one of your actors, and you don't want that. You're taking photos with models and someone's paying you a lot of money for this. You want to make sure that lighting appears where it ought to appear. So a reflector can really be anything. But when it comes down to the actual type of reflector that we want to use as people shaping and crafting the light, reflectors generally fall into the category of something that might have a metallic look to it. So it reflects in a metallic way, the way that metal would reflect. Or it could be just be a white surface, and any number of different types of surfaces in between. So this is not for me to go in too deeply about reflectors. I do that on another lesson that I cover, and also in some of my courses that I teach, I cover that in a great level of detail. But for now, I want you to just focus on the fact that a reflector will do what it says. It will reflect light. And as we know, light reflects according to one of the most simple physics concepts that I had to learn when I started to learn about light. Light reflects off of surfaces, and it's what we call the angle of incidence equal to the angle of reflection. So if light is coming in and we have a surface relative to the light rays, we create a 45-degree angle where the light is going to hit that surface. Then it's going to bounce away at another 45 degrees relative to what we would call normal. And I know I'm throwing some physics terms here at you, but I just want to give you the concept here. And so it will take off in the direction of a further 45 degrees. So 90 degrees between the angle of incidence and the angle of reflection. So we can predict where the light is going to go. We don't have to measure these angles, but we can know that it is going to exit the surface of reflection at the same angle it came in. And that's all we really need to understand. So why do we need reflectors? Now that we understand what they do, they reflect the light that we have. Well, we need reflectors because sometimes a reflector effectively can double up on our lighting. So we can take one light and one reflector, and it can behave as though we have actually got 2 lights. And I'll demonstrate that really quickly for you. But what it can also do is to fill in what we call shadows or areas where the light, because it travels in straight lines, cannot ordinarily easily get to. For instance, if a light is coming from this side of Fred's nose will block the light that would be trying to get across to the other side of his nose. And that's because light travels in straight lines. Okay, for you physics experts who talk about the light bending around stars, we're not going to go there, okay? But for now, we're just going to focus on light as it is on planet Earth, and for the most part in a photography studio or in someone's home. So we don't have to worry about that. So now that we kind of understand what a reflector is and what a reflector is doing, in the main, I want to just say, I'm not covering everything about what reflectors do today. So in the main, what do reflectors do? They reflect light back. Now you might also hear the term bounce. Bounce is the same as reflecting. It's really the same term, but just applied when a photographer is probably taking a surface that may be not part of their arsenal and bouncing the light, say, off of a ceiling, which I've done many, many times to create a soft light, but it goes everywhere. You can't control it. But sometimes that gets you out of a spot if you don't have the ability to really control the light. You can bounce off of a wall. There's lots of different ways to do that. But ultimately, when we say bounce, we're talking about the same thing as reflecting the light off of a surface. So with that all said, some things to consider. how that surface is behaving is going to impact the light that comes off of it. And I'll cover that at another time. But if you, in one scenario, bounce off of a white surface, the light that comes back is going to be white. If it's a white surface which is very shiny, the light is going to come back shiny and hard, even if the light going onto it was soft. And again, these are concepts that I cover in a lot more detail, and I'll go into some of those in a May event that I've got coming up. Nice event for you to come and spend some time with me learning about photography and how it applies to speaking live online as a coach. So most of the fills that we will create are going to effectively, and when I say fill, what I'm saying is the areas of shadow which ordinarily would occur because of light traveling in straight lines, we can fill them, but they will be filled with the quality and some of the properties of the surface that the light is being bounced off of. And that's really what I wanted to say. So now that I've covered some of these concepts, we're going to go into a demonstration. We're going to quickly cover how we would be using this reflector in a normal circumstance. And just before we do anything, I'm going to show you what the reflector is. Now, this is a metal surface. It's not being sold in the shop as a reflector. It's an aluminium sheet, and it is actually designed as a mouse mat. So we have on one side black surface, and one side it's got a silvered or aluminium look to the silvered surface. And what can also happen, and I'll cover this in another thing, but we can use this as what we call negative fill, which is where we don't want any light to actually shine on. We want to leave it as a shadow. We can actually create shadows where we have a light. In perfect lighting, we can still bounce a dark surface with the light and it will appear as a shadow. Isn't that wonderful that we can do these great things with the light? I love it. So let's do a quick demonstration. I'm going to use this small light and I'm going to show you, it's already on, but I'm going to just show you how this all works together. Quick warning, I'm going to turn off the lights that are currently on me and on my good friend Fred here. And we're going to do this so that we have the effect that you can see it in real time and see it really well. So the lights are going off now. Okay, so we're in complete darkness. What I'm going to do is to show you first what happens when I put the light onto Fred just as it is now. So as we can see, half of Fred is in darkness. So if I bring a reflector up like this, you can see that I can now change that relationship. And by just moving the reflector around, we can see that Fred, with the light being held in the same place, I'm trying to hold them in the same place. It's not as easy to do as you might at first think. But you can see the effect. No reflector with reflector. I'm just using one light. And if I use more reflectors, you can see that what I can do is to really change how Fred looks in this scenario. So with that one light, we'll also notice that it still is quite hard because we can see the reflection we can see the shadow being cast onto from Fred's nose and onto the side of his face. It's actually quite a hard shadow. We can fill it in to some extent, but what we have to understand is that there's another factor of light, which is the root mean square. The further we put light away is the less that the effect or the amount of light we can bounce becomes. So with the fact that we are doubling the distance, we get a quarter of the light coming back. Again, another principle that I go into. So this is the first aspect of what I wanted to show you, but here's something else that we can see, is that if I wanted to create lighting onto Fred, I could just do this. I could just bring the light around this way. But I want you to see what's happening just below Fred's nose and just below Fred's chin. The light is actually quite hard. So if I wanted to soften that light, what I could do is to use this technique, which is to bounce that light, as I've mentioned before, off of a surface. And now we can see that the light on Fred is actually quite soft. It creates a much softer texture, much smoother onto Fred. And so what we can do with this, and I'm just going to keep this light on me for a second so you can still see me, is I'm going to show you how to do this with a much bigger tool. And I'll show you this after when I put the lights back on. But here's a much, much bigger tool. which is going to give us a slightly different effect, because this is much larger and will show us what's possible when we have the same light and we're bouncing off of a surface. So now you can see the same light bouncing off of a surface, and look at how much different that light is for Fred. Depending on where I position it, you can see that it's illuminating both his face at the same time as illuminating underneath his face. Now, there is so much more I could do with this, and time just doesn't permit, but I just want you to get a sense of how just learning a few techniques about light can change everything about the lighting experience. So I hope that has given you enough of a sense of what's possible. I'm just going to put the lights back on now so that you can go back to the normal lighting. And I'll show you that this is a reflector. It's referred to as a clamshell reflector, but the main thing about it is it's curved. And the idea is that it wraps around your talent. So we can bring that closer. If I just use myself as the example, then what we're doing is we can bring it close to me, and I could still have it out of my camera shot. So I can still put it somewhere like here, and it will still have an amazing effect on me. As you could see, when it's a solo operator, it can be a bit tricky to get it right, but I can see myself and I can see that the light is giving me a bit more illumination. But more so than what I want, sorry Fred, for this session. Sorry Fred, I didn't mean that, Fred. But more than what we need for this session, and I'll just put this all away so I can get back down to the lesson. So hopefully that has helped you to understand a little bit more about how we can make lighting very impactful, how we can, by illuminating ourselves more fully, more completely, more professionally, it lowers that concern that our audience has about us, because we are now being presented and presenting more like the authority that we are. And that's going to raise our confidence. It's going to raise our certainty about how we're presenting. And it's going to help our audience to really listen to us, to focus on us, and to get the most out of the lesson or the talk or the sort of function of what we're trying to achieve with our audience through our message. Now, what I would love to hear from you is, what part of that did you find to be the most beneficial to you? And perhaps what will you take forward when you're going to be doing your next presentation? Because you can see that you don't have to have massive big lights. I mean, this is a very, very small light, can be put into many, many different places, using a tripod, using a light stand, or even clamps, which I'll talk about in another lesson. But these can be put almost anywhere. And with a fold-up reflector, the reflector that I used just a while ago isn't really a fold-up reflector, so you couldn't really travel with it. But you could actually get versions that you can travel with. But I'd love to hear what you think you're going to be doing for your next live where you have the option. Okay. That's really what I wanted to cover, but I do want to remind you, on the 19th, which is next Tuesday coming, I'm going to be running an event which is limited in the number of people that can attend. Only for 100 people we're running this event. And I want you to make sure that you get a chance to come in and not only listen to me, but to listen to the other speaker who's going to be joining me. And I will say his name today. David Royland is going to be with me. And David is a leading speaker who teaches, coaches, experts, women in particular is his expertise, women who are in leadership roles, who don't often get a chance to speak up the way that they want to with authority. And he teaches them how to put their conversation together so that it lands with the right kind of power and precision. And when we marry these two things together, this is what makes the perfect example of how we can help coaches to get online, to speak with great lighting, but then when you marry with that a great presentation that lands and says the right words in the right way, you actually have a winning formula on your hands. You have what we call the look good, sound great formula. Now, I want to carry on, but you know what? There comes a point where everything has to really come to an end. And as much as I would love to carry on, I'm just going to remind you, look for the link, look for the space below this video. You'll see somewhere there'll be a link showing you how to get to the event, to book your spot of only 100. It's a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining me. As I say every time, and believe me, I really want to say this with a great deal of sincerity. You could be doing lots of different things with your time. And I am grateful that you choose to listen to what I have to say, to spend some time with me, whether you come live or you're watching the recording. I appreciate you. Thank you very much for joining me, because, you know, this, what I do it because I really enjoy it. I love doing it. But I also realize that for some people, this may be the piece of information that you hear that changes everything about your presentation. So from me and from Fred, thank you very much for joining us. And as always, until the next one, I leave you in peace. See you soon.